Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Experiencer Podcast, the podcast that brings you upfront and personal with past and present enigmatic experiences from individuals who have witnessed or even interacted with the strange, the extraordinary, and the otherwise unknown existence of UFOs or aliens. If you've had an out-of-this-world experience you'd like to share, please reach out to me at theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. If you have photos or footage of UFOs, IAPs, or any other extraordinary phenomena and would like to share it, please forward it to theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. I am humbled and happy to be able to broadcast with you all and share the following experiences from today's guest. I'm going to keep this simple. I'll introduce our guest and otherwise we'll jump right into the show and let him tell us the gist of it. This is Kris West from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kris. And Kris is kind enough to spend some time with us today to share and hopefully just maybe inspire folks to a more mind-opening dialogue around this sort of subject. Please, Kris, do us a favor and begin with giving us the setting. Maybe start with telling us where and when, how old you were when all this took place.
So, I think, I know it was Halloween. The year, I'm a little bit foggy on, but I'm pretty sure it was 2015, 2014 or 2015. And I know it was Halloween, the exact Halloween day. Again, Las Vegas, Nevada. And if you know anything about Las Vegas, the east side of Las Vegas is kind of separated from the rest of the town. It's more towards the Air Force Base. No freeways go over there. If you want to get to the east side of Las Vegas, you kind of have to truck through the entire town. It's a little more secluded, and no, it's a little more run down than the rest. They don't do a lot of gentrification over there on the east side. And it's like the last stop till you get into whatever road takes you to Lake Mead. So all I'm saying is it's a little bit more secluded part of Las Vegas. And it's a little older.
Right.
And again, it's towards the Air Force Base. So we're over on the east side of Las Vegas. And I'm going to a friend's house. I got another friend with me, and we show up and kind of waiting for this friend to come outside. Again, I'm probably 21, 22 years old. Going to my friend's house, and as we're waiting for him to come outside, and this is just we're going to hang out and party a little bit. It's Halloween. It hasn't gotten dark yet. It's midday, 3:30. 4 o'clock. And as we're waiting outside, I look up, right off the bat, there's something in the air. There's something in the sky. And not super close, but, close enough to see with the naked eye, right?
Right.
So in my field of vision, it was probably, the same distance a normal plane would be, right?
And again, you're knocking on your friend's door at this time?
I think, no, we had already knocked on the door, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'll be out in a minute. And he had a nice porch area with chairs. So we just again, we would go over there, sit around. I don't drink or anything, but, I think I smoked some cigarettes back in the day. But we just hang out, bullshit, just do the friend thing.
Yeah, post
again,
on the front
in the early
porch.
20s. Yeah, just post on the front porch. Exactly. So we got to posting, and again, I look up and there's this object in the sky. And at first, me and my buddy are looking at it, and I'm like, "Oh shit! There's balloons super far away." Because in first glance, it looked like a cluster of balloons,
Hmm.
and we're studying it, and we're like, anytime you see something just like casually in the sky that isn't familiar, you're gonna look at it. You're gonna study it,
Spend an
right?
extra second. Yeah.
And the first thing that I noticed about it was it wasn't moving like balloons move in the air.
Bobbing about.
Like it moved with purpose, right? So it kind of drifted. It almost seemed like it's drifting one way and then would stop. And I'm like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah, that's peculiar.
And then we ended up getting binoculars, and through the binoculars, I could kind of make out the shape a little bit better. And again, it's not traveling. It's almost stationary. Like it's kind of drifting, but again with purpose. So in my line of view, it's maybe moving, a few feet one way, a few feet the other way. So up there, the distance is more than feet, but in my line of view, you know what I'm saying? It's not
Yeah.
moving a great distance. It's not moving across the whole sky. It's not floating like you would see balloons floating across the horizon, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of staying in a specific area and then traveling back and forth. So we're like, that's odd. So we get the binoculars and looking at it. And the shape of it, again, very odd shape. The best way I could explain how it looked was, it's the seed of life. It's a shape.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
sacred
Okay.
geometry
I'm sorry.
shape. You could look it up. So the seed of life is a sacred geometry shape.
Okay, the
Um,
seed of life. I'm catching up with you now, and yes, I do know all
yeah,
the circles. There's 7 of them total that make up the seed of life, and then it repeats on and on.
yeah. So like there's a circle is like the first shape, and then the seed of life is like 4 circles kind of on top of each other, and in almost like a pyramid shape, right?
Right.
Or like or a diamond shape actually.
There you go.
So the best I could describe how this thing looked was like a 3D version of the seed of life. So it was like a circle on top, maybe like 2 or 3 circles in 3 dimensions around the bottom, and then another circle on the bottom kind of create a diamond, right?
So hence why it looked like a cluster of balloons at one point.
Agreed. That's why I thought it was balloons. And then so again, we're studying the thing, and it was chilling for like hanging out in this specific area in the sky for a good half an hour,
Whoa.
30 minutes. And again, we're looking at it, we're like, it's got to be balloons. But again, the thing is moving with purpose. So like it would, like I said, it would drift to the left and then stop, kind of drift back to the right, stop, go up, stop, go down, stop. And balloons don't go down. Balloons go usually like up and in one direction
Right.
with the
Up in
wind,
one
right?
direction or down in a direction. One of the two. Yeah.
Exactly. So this again is going against that. So again, we're like, what the fuck? And your first thought is like, it's not. You don't immediately think this is extraterrestrial.
Right.
You think
Just like, what the F?
you're just trying to think, yeah, what is this? Like, what am I not seeing that is, computing to where it's something familiar, because it's not balloons. We have binoculars. And the reason we knew it was balloons because when you get the binoculars, you can judge the distance, right? You're like, okay, this is far enough away to where it must be huge. Like this is as big, if not bigger, than what your average plane would look like.
Let
At
alone
that
balloons.
Let alone balloons. Exactly. So again, when you finally take a look at it, you're like, all right, that's far enough away where if it was balloons, I wouldn't even be able to see it. And again, from noticing it, eventually we tried, again, this is 2014, 2015, the iPhone and shit, I think either just came out or hadn't come out yet. Nonetheless, I think I was too poor at the time to afford an iPhone. So I had this like little flip phone and I'm trying to take pictures of it and video, and it's just the I don't even think you can see it on the flip phone camera at the
No,
time.
that's hilarious.
So getting back to the story again, we're at my friend's house. We're on a porch. We're watching this shape move through the sky. We're starting to lose daylight. And, again, after a half an hour, 45 minutes of this thing moving around, we're like, all right, like we don't want to leave. We don't know what it is, but we're not like immediately thinking like this is an extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional or whatever ship. We're just like, what is this thing that isn't acting normal?
Yeah.
And literally on cue, when we're like deciding to not pay attention to it anymore, we're like, all right, we gotta go. It's Halloween. We're gonna go live our life. You know what I'm saying? On cue, it blasts the fuck off.
Whoa.
And this is what was the strangest part, because if we would have just left and it would have stayed in the sky, we would have just been like, all right, I wonder what that weird shape in the sky was, like that
Right.
weird round ball thing in the sky was.
Of
Who
course.
knows? But again, we're looking at it and we're like, okay, we gotta go, and then you just see a red streak, like no sound, no boom, no explosion, no boom. You didn't hear anything. It was just a silent red streak across the sky. And I mean, again, in my field of vision, this red streak, rivaled a shooting star. You know what I'm saying? But in the opposite direction.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It went away from the Earth as opposed to towards the Earth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because again, when you see shooting stars, they're usually like they go across, or they go, they seem wherever the curvature of the Earth is and whatnot, but they seem to be going down, or at an angle or whatever.
Striking across and down, versus this thing rising.
This one went exactly. This one went up and away, and my jaw dropped. I was like, "What the fuck?" I don't know what your language. If
you're okay, go ahead.
I said.
So quick question. Did you and all your friends, did you guys actually announce like, hey, okay guys, let's get ready to go?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So on
like
the prior show, pardon me cutting you off, Chris. On the prior show, we talked about not the law of attraction per se, as much as saying the guest had the experience of speaking about UFOs, walked out the house, and then seen it. So we had to have that follow-up question, that obvious question, do you think you attracted it? So in this circumstance, and this is still early on in the show, you see this thing, you stare at it for a half hour, like you said, you were about to leave and walk away, at which point it would have just been another odd thing in the day soon to be forgotten. But after one of your party announces, hey, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get on with our evening, now it makes itself clear and obvious to you and leaves, complete with a red trail headed into the upper atmosphere. So it's just really something cool to show that this phenomenon hears us in some shape or form. It seems to react to our consciousness to make clear what we do see. That's really something. That's really cool.
And we, like I said, we verbally had a debate. We're like, should we leave? Should we stop paying attention to this thing in the sky?
Wow.
And not kind of wanting to, but you can't sit and stare at this thing forever.
Right.
And again, it's not close enough to where I can see any real detail. It's not, again, I can't make it out before it, blasts off. But like I said, it was just something in the sky. Nothing too big, but, odd enough to want to keep watching, but, not, I couldn't make it out well enough to like ruin my whole night about just staying there and studying,
Right, or make it factual in your mind because it has hard edges. Or
exactly.
So if I may, for our listeners, and here I go cutting you off again, Chris, if I may, can I challenge your description on this thing? You said that it's hard to interpret, that it looks like the seed of life. How about color? How about edges? How about shape? Was it triangular? Was it cigar? Was it rounded or spherical? Was it just a singular glowing object when you put the binocs up? What can you give us as far as details?
So I think it was like a brass color, slightly shiny. It was not glowing by any means. Um, it wasn't transparent in any way. It was definitely metallic uh, on some level, but almost brass, brown, orangey color. You know, um, that's pretty much the best way I can describe it. And again, if you need a real good description, I suggest your listeners look up, a 3D version of the speed of light, because it was the exact shape of that.
Wow, that's really something in itself. And you mentioned the orange color. Can you tell me a little
Yeah,
bit more about that? Was it emanating? Was it, you said it didn't glow. So where was the orange as far as you could interpret that?
it was it was just the color of the object. Like I said, it if I had to describe the texture of it, what I would what I would describe it as is, you know, maybe the same texture as like a um, wrecking ball, right? Like a bunch of giant metal brass balls, you know,
Attached to that shape. Yeah.
or let's put this a number of brass spherical objects, aligned in a way that they, to make appear like not appear, but to make a diamond.
There you
You
go.
know,
A
a bunch of
semicircular,
circular objects.
semi-diamond
Yeah,
shape, huh?
yeah, if you put a bunch of circles together and you stack them, in 3D, it would it would make a diamond,
So that's
pretty much.
where the orange glow, or the orange that you see and interpret, that's off of the semi-metallic brass surface. Then
Yeah, bronze, brass, you know.
I get it. No,
Um,
I get it.
yeah, it wasn't glowing. It wasn't emanating any light.
And
I
of
saw
course,
zero light.
no fire from the back end, no propulsion that you could tell of,
No propulsion.
no
We
sound
were
the whole
looking for
time.
like huh?
Any sound the whole time, or specifically when it
Nope,
took off, did it make any
nope,
sound?
no sound whatsoever. And again, if a plane was at the same distance that this thing was at, you would hear, the average sound of a plane, you know, crossing the sky. This this had zero. And it was funny because, there's three of us there, and my buddy, who was my roommate at the time, we're studying this thing, and I'm like, oh, cool, what the fuck is this thing in the air trying to, is it aliens? It can't be, is
Mm-hmm.
it balloons? It doesn't look like a balloon,
Right.
and it's too far away, it's too big. These have got to be gigantic ass balloons. And then we notice how it moves, knowing how it's going back and forth in the skyline, like away, like against whatever probably the wind would be, with it and down and up, what I'm saying. It had purpose. And then the funny thing is that, like, my other friend, who with his house, he couldn't give a shit about what this thing was. He was like, yeah, whatever, it's aliens. I don't care. That is not, couldn't care two shits. Wanted to play his 12-string guitar and just, smoke weed. And
Get into
just,
Halloween already.
and again, me and my buddy, I don't remember if my other friends saw the streak, but, as soon as we seen this thing blast off, and again, if it was just me that saw it, I probably would just cast it off as like, maybe I turned too quickly or whatever. But we have an immediate, what's the word? Just not justification, but recognition. Two people saw the same thing at the same time,
There you go.
so it's hard to deny.
And how
I
about the
heard
third friend? Did he see it take off?
no, he wasn't paying attention to it at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying? He's just sitting there powering some weed, and me and my other buddy, my roommate, are studying this object in the sky for 45 minutes.
I was going to say complete dialogue with the object in your observations. So really, I had tons of time to tune in to you guys as observers.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
That's really something.
I'm trying to remember. I feel, again, this is over 6 years ago. I feel like I had the thought at the time that it noticed us. I don't know why, but for some reason I have a vague feeling that I had a feeling it recognized that we were looking at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really cool too. Thank you for sharing that and allowing that to pop back up.
Yeah. So after the thing blasts off, I will say this: viewing something like that on a surface level, if you just said to somebody, "I just saw a UFO," right? And I don't know if it's alien, extraterrestrial, whatever. I'm not gonna pretend that I know what it was. All I know is it was an actual unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, in reality, you would think if you saw a UFO in real life, that would change your life. Right? It would have such an impact that you would question everything. The reality is, you see a UFO and you see it blast off, it's just another thing that happened that day. Like we still just I had to go to work the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Still had to pay my bills.
I still had to pay my bills. I still had to, do whatever I had to do. It's not that it was unimpactful, but it was just something that happened.
Right. And it's hard to discuss with other people because it's hard to validate that to other people. It's hard for anybody to know what you truly experienced. And in the end, of course, people almost find it irritating to talk about something that they don't see, but that you're so driven about or so impacted by. So it's really an almost awkward or hard thing to have an honest conversation about or dialogue about.
And I'm just as guilty as the next person. But I have noticed when telling people this specific story, because I am not a person that again, it's not that I don't believe. I don't play into people's ghost stories, or I'm not a ghost guy. Let's just put it that way. I'm not a UFO guy. Most people, I think, I don't believe, I guess. Which is, even though I've had my own experience, and this is what I'm guilty of, someone will tell me their story, I'm like, yeah, that probably wasn't real. But mine was. You know what I'm saying?
Is that due to any form of sarcasm on your part, or is it just more, reflection of the times and the world we live in, especially here in the West?
I would probably say the latter. And again, this is a fault of myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not to beat you up, I'm a pretty sarcastic guy too. So, I'm a realist on many fronts.
And it takes a lot for me to trust somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like me and you've known each other for a number of years. If I feel like if you told me something, you're not going to bullshit me.
And I'm not, and and I know that we're not attention seekers. And that's a tough thing with a lot of people. They tell things from a point of needing attention. So it's hard not to see that when you hear someone telling of something extraordinary.
Agreed. And so again, the thing that I'm guilty of is, somebody will tell me their story and I'll dismiss it, but I'll be like, but mine is real and here. And people have done that to me as well, where, I'll tell them, hey, I saw this object and it blasted off. And they'll go, yeah, sure you did. But this is what happened to me.
Interesting.
Nonetheless, again, it's strange what I choose to believe in this realm of the, I don't know, is it cryptic? Are aliens a part of cryptic? I don't know what this whole
Not
genre.
I'm not going to be the defining person. I can't honestly answer that, but all I know is cryptics. They seem to be Bigfoots and dogmen, and I could be absolutely wrong. But
Like earthly based
aliens
phenomena.
are their own thing, Chris.
Yeah. So, but it's all like it's all one thing. Like aliens, ghosts, cryptic, extra dimensional beings. Um, even like again, I hate that this is lumped into this, but this, what do you call this genre of things? Like the unknown? It just seems too broad. You know.
Yeah, I don't have a complete answer for that one. It's definitely still, even though we have a lot more than just 20 years ago, it's still a seemingly disconnected, all extraordinary. They don't fit under just supernatural. Now today we have multi-dimensional, so yeah,
Yeah.
interdimensional. So it is really tough to generalize any of this.
I do know I had this one unexplained experience that I cannot explain other than it had to be a UFO, whether or not that's you know
Yeah, and
some
even
advanced technology or interdimension or extra dimensional, extraterrestrial. I have no idea, but
yeah.
I do know that I saw a thing in the sky that blasted off.
Yeah, you saw a lot more than that. You had someone there, as we said, to confirm and validate. You saw it leaving, and thirdly, at least, if not last, but least, is that it seemed to, you know, be interacting with your consciousness, in that you and your friend are having a dialogue about your observations until you decide to leave, at which point this thing beats you to it and leaves along with a red trail for you to observe. So I mean, there was quite the facet to your observation. So that's a full on experience if I've ever heard one.
My recollection of it, again, my feeling towards it now is like, yeah, it was no big deal. Like I saw it, it happened. You know,
No, that's true. That's truth. Until we as a species can either have these sightings en masse or have them so frequently that the dialogue can be more inspiring, it just is kind of a meh thing. However, hopefully everybody enjoys tuning into this show and listening and talking about it a little more.
what I will say is that it seems in the past 4 years or 4 or 5 years that with the I don't know if it's the CIA or whatever predominant government entity, they're starting to release Air Force
Right, the
footage,
so-called
and
disclosures and what have you.
yeah, 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 they're at least whether or not they think it's aliens or not, but they're at least saying, hey, we see some shit from time to time in the sky, and we have videotapes. Whether it's the what's his name, Bob Lazar,
Mm-hmm,
his
mm-hmm.
stories and whatnot. They're they're starting to recognize, at least
Indeed.
on in a community or level or Earth level, that hey, there's shit in the sky that we don't know.
Yes.
And then if we did know, we're not going to tell you, but you know, you guys
But
aren't completely insane.
right, and there's a few things we have to admit. One of which in that dossier that was really intriguing, I would say, they admit, of course, the Navy has dropped theirs. I don't know if it was the CIA, it was the Pentagon dropped another. So there's been a few branches of the government, but one of the most interesting ones was the most recent Pentagon release. At which point in the report, if you read in there, not very deep, it does admit to not only sightings, not only Navy and military interactions, police, and more, but it does admit to abductions and removals of fetuses from women. That is a conversation that everybody should be having in some shape or form, because right there is the government admitting that this is not just a coming and going. There is something really big at hand if they're abducting men and women and taking the fetuses of women. Now we're talking, the government is just, there's a serious hint, there's a serious clue right there in that piece. And that just is mind blowing right there.
Abductions is definitely strange because I've heard of a bunch of different forms of of abduction. I can't say that word right. Forms of abduction, whether it be just mental abduction where people dream a certain thing, whether it's physical abduction. What is it? There's like a couple that
Oh,
got
yeah.
abducted. What is their name?
Betty and Barney
Forget.
Hill.
That's it. The only other, I don't even know if it's unexplainable, but I've had one other experience, and it wasn't visual as much as a feeling, I guess you can say, but it was heavily psychedelic induced. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Would you want to hear?
Yeah, please.
All right. So I took a championship amount of mushrooms one time.
All right.
And I'm not a big hallucinogenic guy.
Okay.
I've taken, I've never done LSD. I had a bunch of friends that got together and took a bunch of mushrooms. I had to work, so they just saved some for me, and I took them alone one time. But anyway, I'm mid deep in the experience, right? And I'm sitting in my bed, and it's raining outside. And if you have any experience with hallucinogenics, you know that when you close your eyes, it's different than when you normally close your eyes in real life. Like, it's just whatever you see in your mind is clear. Let's put it that way. So anyways, I'm laying on my bed. It's maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I took them late at night, just kind of have like the whole night to myself, and whatever happens, happens. And again, I live by the Air Force Base. So I'm laying in my bed, and in my mind's eye, I am almost kind of like how Neo sees the world in the Matrix. It's just kind of all black, and I'm viewing myself almost in green light, floating in nothingness, right?
Very cool.
And I'm kind of breathing, in deep, out slowly, and as I'm breathing, energy is dissipating from me in pulses, right? Breathe in, I breathe out, and it's like a pulse, right, of energy. This is what I'm seeing. And again, I'm on mushrooms, so who knows if I know it's real.
All good.
This is, the experience that I had was, I live near the Air Force Base. As I'm doing this, so I'm in this state of meditation, trance, if you will, and I'm pulsating energy. A giant helicopter flies over my house, right, and it just completely disrupts what I'm in. And I breathe in, and then it's just this violent, over my house. It's the middle of the night, and I remember I had this very strong feeling of panic, and I breathed out, and again, I'm pulsating energy in a slight way. A huge pulse of energy came out of it, right? And I get up, and I'm kind of like, I was kind of like at the end trail of my trip anyways. I get up, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? What just happened? That was violent, visceral pulse from, planes flying over me. And I I gotta shake this off, and I go to turn on the TV. All the power is out of my house. All the cable is out. Everything electrical, or everything was out. Completely out. I had no power to my house at all.
Okay.
And I know I had power before this. So again, it sounds made up, or you're just tripping. But nonetheless, it did happen. I seem to have emitted a EMP and blew out the power to my house. And who knows how far.
All in response to the interjecting helicopter that really got in the funk of your good meditation, and kind of just huffed and puffed and blew an EMP pulse. Yeah,
it was almost like a transfer of energy. And again,
ooh, okay.
If somebody told me this, I'd be like, "Oh, you're just tripping, man." you know.
Right. You're
But
totally tripping. You didn't cause it. But how long was the power out?
I had to go turn the breaker off and on.
Ooh, you had a real cable moment. You literally took some form of telekinetic energy from everything going on, including the helicopter, and then just shot it back out, huh?
Yep. And so those two experiences are the only thing that I can't really explain
That's really
in
cool.
my whole life.
That's
And
really
I have
cool.
a great memory. I am very, like, I'm hyper aware. I'm just that kind of guy. Those are the only two times in my whole life I can't explain, you know. I mean, I can explain them, but I don't have like a reality-based explanation.
There we go. There we go. But that's still fair enough. That's really something quite keen and extraordinary right there. And you obviously were fine enough. I stumbled to the backyard, found the fuse box, and turned it back on, and everything came back on. Wow, yeah, that's really cool. That's really quite an experience. Lynn Buchanan wrote The Sixth Sense after he was trained in remote viewing for the Army. And one of his stories, I think it was his. I'm pretty sure it was his own story, was something to the, quick telling, long story short, that, he was on a Navy ship and was just a regular guy, tech guy, or, whatever in the hull of the ship. And something happened to the effect of him creating an EMP. And that's how they discovered him. If it was, and I could be absolutely wrong, maybe it was one of the other people in his group, but in his small circle being trained, but I'm pretty sure that's how they found him and put him in this remote viewing program, is because they're like, they did a little back
Huh.
research and were like, how the hell did this EMP happen on our, on our Navy ship vessel? And one of the people within that department did a whole bunch of, obviously dotted some I's and crossed some T's and circled some things and was like, I think it was a guy, and I think it was this guy. We'll take him, something to that effect. So either way, it's not unheard of. It is something that has been reported in the phenomena in the literature before. So that's really
Well,
cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love that book. It's
you know,
great.
what'd be weird
Yeah.
is if, you know, again, this is my conspiracy brain. If the government noticed, or whoever noticed that,
Mm.
I was in this deep trance, and, again, I was already, in my brain emanating some energy, right?
Yeah, that you
Uh,
become aware of.
I wonder if they flew over me on purpose. I know that sounds crazy, but you never know.
Right, you never know, but there's nothing wrong with asking the question.
This is why I like your podcast, is
Well,
because you're asking the questions. That's what I was going to say.
oh man, why thank you. Why thank you. That's very humbling, and it's fun to have a place, a refuge where we can ask these questions. I think there's nothing wrong with consciousness asking, how conscious are we?
Agreed.
And we
And
obviously seem
again,
to be downplaying it in the West, but yet, go to India or China and you've got everything from, crouching tiger, hidden dragon theory going on to, India with levitation and more. And it could all just be mythology and beefed up, or, there could be some facet of reality to it. So obviously these experiences, they're not still occurring. You haven't had anything similar happen since that.
no, and I miss it, to tell you the truth. I feel like when I was a younger man, I was a little bit more open to the universe, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as you get older, I think life gets in the way, and maybe not. Maybe it's just me, but I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of lost the connection with that. Uh, so maybe that's why I haven't. But no, I haven't had any other experiences since. And both of those experiences happened around the same.
So, if I may, I'm gonna ask you to re-clarify that, and that's because I find something really cool in the subconscious phrasing of what you said there. Are you saying that your intuition tells you that when we're younger, because we have less frame of reference or more open-minded, however you want to say it, that open-mindedness may attract more experiences? And that's what you feel in some ways as we grow older, crystallize our thinking. We don't attract as much, we don't perceive as much, and therefore we don't see it as much.
I think it's all of the above. But yeah, when you're younger, you just, I don't know, the potential for how you perceive things is just grander. You're whatever it is, your innocence or your
Yeah.
perspective of anything can happen, I can do anything, just permeates through, your entire existence.
Mm.
And again, when you get older, it's just, you got bills to pay, you got responsibilities, and, you're not looking to the sky as much, if you have a, 50 an hour a week job.
A lot of experiences people have are when they're younger. And, I don't know if, age directly plays into it, but, you'll hear so many people say, well, I was in my 20s. Well, I was in my teens. And so the story has a real far back, connotation to most of everybody's experiences. So there
And
may be something to that.
yeah, 100%. And I think it also correlates to like how younger people are able to learn technology a lot quicker. And kind of where I'm getting at with that is, I heard this theory about the indigenous people when Columbus, came to the shores of wherever. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a theory that they had to go to the beach 3 or 4 times before they could actually see the boats because they just had no reference.
There you go.
In their entire existence of actually seeing them.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, I mean, it might be the same type of phenomenon where, younger people are more open. So, whether, how they perceive technology, yada, yada, yada.
That's a popular one, but I really like that one too, and I completely agree. And I had heard that as a teenager and didn't understand it at all. How can one or more people not be able to see the same physical thing? And I've come to see it in my own life. It's definitely rigidness, not wanting to confer or conform, not wanting to have something disrupt your daily, for whatever reason. I've definitely seen it in humanity and in people. So by all means, man, it's a trip to put that analogy to us with otherworldly or other dimensional life.
And whether or not that's by design,
There you go.
Maybe it could be exactly what quote unquote they want, to distract you with your 9 to 5 so that you don't notice the interdimensional highway right above our heads.
And if you do notice something, it's money, and that's it. So go get it.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Indeed.
Money is insane, especially today.
Yeah. No, but that is there's always something to keep our blinders on, and that's really something. Okay, so let me just ask you in a hindsight question to all this. Have these occurrences, both of them, either one of them, however you want to answer this, how have they left you feeling? How have they left you thinking?
I kind of touched on it earlier, where I don't really, it didn't leave me anything, to tell you the truth, which is kind of sad. And this is, my own personal journey type thing, but it's something that I feel on some level I'm lacking as a full-fledged adult, is that I feel like I've lost that connection with because I don't, with the universe, which I feel like I had at one point, but I'm not spiritual in any way, even though I may sound like it through this podcast. At least I don't perceive myself to be a spiritual person. I'm interested in things like psychic geometry and whatnot, but I don't know if I practice it to where I believe it. Does that make sense?
Indeed.
I'm a little saddened that it hasn't made more of an impact on my life, I guess. And it's kind of something I touched on earlier, where it just kind of happened and you move on. I didn't dedicate my life to finding UFOs or anything of that nature.
That's fair enough, though, man. That's all right.
It definitely happened, and I don't really think about it all that much. But you know what it has done? It's definitely kept me curious. Let's leave it at that. I've stayed curious.
I like that. Anyone in your family ever had any experiences? Mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, anybody ever shared experiences with you in that regards?
Um, no, can't think of any specific story where a family member has told me about anything
No worries.
of that nature.
No worries. It's more of a general practice question we do around here, so pardon it, but it doesn't exclude you or include you in any special club, so no worries. And then I do have a final question for you here today before I let you go, and that is, have you ever reported your experience to any agency, such as MUFON, a National UFO Reporting Center?
No, I haven't. And I, it's not that I'm not for. It just didn't cross my mind, I guess, because
Yeah,
on some level, you just think that
downplay it.
probably wasn't what I. Yeah, exactly. You just downplay.
And in the meanwhile, do me a favor before I do wrap this thing up. Do you have a podcast that you've been working on you'd like to plug at this time? We'd love to hear it.
I do. I do a podcast in art. Gig posters is really what it is. I talk to a lot of artists that make posters for your favorite bands here and there, and that podcast is called Spiral Out Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, anywhere podcasts are released. Spiral Out Podcast. People that create art that is attached to music.
Could you tell me some of the bands that their art has you
Um,
covered?
it's a lot. Like I've talked to artists that made Metallica posters, Tool posters, Perfect Circle posters,
All right.
um, Deftones posters,
Oh man,
Primus.
that's all the
Yeah,
best.
these guys, they are the. I talk to the guys that are at the top of their game making art for bands. I mean, they've done stuff with Swift, Kanye. Uh, if they're releasing a limited edition or something poster at the show, these guys make it. You know. And the second thing, which is kind of a little bit more in line with what you're doing, I have a film coming out very very soon. Um,
You're
so
talking
yeah,
about apoptosis.
apoptosis. They agree.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Starring our good friend Gus Langley.
Yep. So that'll be released in festivals this coming year, and yeah, a lot of cool things. I'm excited to see where your podcast goes, though.
Yes, and again, shouts out to you, brother, and thank you so much, everybody. This is the dude who gave me the inspiration, the know-how, the insight to even be able to plug this all together. So thank you for making
Yeah.
that
So
much easier for me, man.
yeah, you're thinking. So yeah, if you want to find anything about me, spiraloutpod.podbean.com, Kris West 222 on Instagram. You'll be able to find my junk. So thank you, Kris.
No doubt, man. Thank you, Kris. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Of course, this was fun. Hopefully in the future we can do this again.
Man, the meta conversation, the extra dimensional, the sacred geometry, very stimulating conversation. So thank you, brother. I
Yeah,
really
I could
appreciate
do it all day.
it. No doubt, no doubt. Thank you so much today, Kris, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I'd like to thank you all for taking the time with me today. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, or follow the Experiencer podcast. If you have an experience you'd like to share, you can contact me at theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com with your story. Also, the Experiencer podcast is building a companion website currently that will showcase and feature both accompanying photos, footage, or details allowed or submitted alongside stories featured on the podcast episodes. It is in this vein that the Experiencer podcast is seeking and now accepting any footage of alleged sightings, encounters, or experiences caught on camera. Please forward any links, footage, or photos via WeTransfer or Dropbox to the email theexperiencerpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, everyone, and until next time, be sure to take care and, of course, keep those eyes on the skies. Good night, everyone.